私はもはやクリムゾニアのもので未だその悲しい妄想に取りつかれているままが見れている。俺はビラージュ、何か力になれることはあるか。なるほど、皆の助けになれば。甘く見ないでほしいものだな。
イエレスのために。
まさか実際に戦場に出ることになる。
Hey everyone, this is Nitro. In this video, I am going to be talking about the new heroes, which is released with the March 12, 2020 update, and the hero I'll be covering in this video is Virash. So there's actually two new heroes with the March 12, 2020 update on international server. So the Twilight Guardians update has both Virash and Knight of Mystery. I am going to talk about Virash in this video. I'll do a separate video on the Knight of Mystery. And let's just begin with Virash, right? So, as a quick overview, both of these heroes are actually very good damage dealers, but because they are damage dealers, both heroes actually need to be at 6 stars to be used properly. So it can be difficult to get these heroes at 6 stars, and thus, that's the major limitation on these two heroes, right? Getting them to 6 stars. Now, with that said, it's generally considered that Knight of Mystery is the better hero of these two, but Virash is actually quite viable too. And finally, I should mention as well, both heroes are much more PvP oriented than PvE oriented. Don't get me wrong, they can be used for PvE content, but generally speaking, you really want them for PvP. There are better heroes to build for PvE content than these two. So, with all that said, let's begin. And Virash, I'll start the coverage by talking about his talent, Memories of Crimson. It has two effects. The first effect is that physical damage increases as hit point decreases, up to 20%, 30%, 40%, or 50% damage increase. That's really a massive effect because it allows Virash to kill enemies while he's weakened, right? But the second effect combos insanely well with that first effect, and it's that he will not die when suffering fatal damage, and gains the effect of immortality that lasts 1, 2, or 3 turns. In addition, when immortality ends, the hero will die, but this immortality effect can trigger up to 3, 4, 5, or 6 times per battle, and this effect cannot be immunized or dispelled. In other words, this secondary effect is also why Virash really needs to be 6 stars to be successful, because that way, after he's been killed the first time, he can live 3 more turns unless you kill him 6 additional times. Right? In other words, at 6 stars, Virash needs to be killed 7 times to be truly killed. Okay. It's doable, don't get me wrong, but it's definitely difficult. At the very least, it's incredibly hard to kill a character 7 times in 1 turn, which generally means that Virash can attack once, revive multiple times, and then get off a second attack before he is truly killed. Right? And both of those attacks are likely to wipe out an opponent with each strike, as this video will show. So, in that sample video, we got to watch Virash charge forward, finish off Jugler very quickly, and then even though he was damaged afterwards, he was able to take out Rachel next, while damaged. So that just shows how brutal Virash can be in the right situations. Alright, so with that example covered, let's move on to talk about Virash in terms of, you know, equipment and classes and soldiers to bring, right? And obviously, Virash has access to either aquatic class or an infantry class. And generally speaking, for Virash, you're going to want him in his aquatic class simply because infantry classes, there's just too many counters to them in PvP, right? Infantry, in particular, Landius as a cavalry tank would be a complete hard counter to Virash. He won't be able to do much damage at all if he was in his infantry class, facing off against Landius. So you're going to want him in his aquatic class, right? And in terms of the best soldier for the aquatic class, you're going to definitely want the soldiers that you saw in that video, which is Lizardmen. Because Lizardmen at level 10, as long as they're standing in a water tile, their attack is increased by 45%. From what I've seen, 45% is the maximum damage increase you can get for any soldier possible, right? Masked maids, zealots, and so on. So Lizardmen, just like that, because they have 45% attack increase, are his best soldiers for an attacker. Alright, so, and in addition to that, as long as you activate Tidal Surge, right, for the extra mobility, he's also on water, so the Lizardmen will get that benefit. So, for his next then, let's talk about the skills you bring on Virash. Well, you're definitely going to want Tidal Surge so that the Lizardmen can benefit for additional attack. You're going to definitely want to bring Aqua Blast, because Aqua Blast, after you activate Tidal Surge, Aqua Blast will do 2 times damage, as you're considered to be in water. Right? And 2 times damage is pretty much the highest attack there is in the game, right? Even Elwyn only has 1.8 times damage with Sword Soul, for example. And then last but not least, for the final skill, it's generally considered to be Suplex, because what Suplex does is it does attack a single enemy, doing 1.2 times damage. However, as long as the enemy is not guarded, that target is moved behind Virash after combat. In other words, you can also break enemy formations by using this Suplex skill, right? If you don't think you can kill an enemy tank, for example, you can attack the enemy tank directly and then suplex them out of position so that their other characters are vulnerable. And of course, you know, you can always bring other skills, like for example, skill support, if you use characters who really need skill, such as Omega. You know, you could bring Roar if you have to. If you don't think you need the suplex skill, you know, Roar for the debuff removal and damage reduction on the enemies could be useful. So there's various options for that last skill, but must bring skills is Tidal Surge and Aqua Blast for sure. So we've talked about his class, Ocean Master. We've talked about his best soldier, Lizardman. We've talked about the skills he brings. And then the final thing to talk about Virash then would be his equipment. So for equipment, I am going to once again refer to the SSR gear for Langrisser Mobile. This sheet was last updated in November 2019. It's been, I guess, 4 months since it's been updated, but overall, it's still very accurate, so there's no need to change to any other sheet. And actually, I think it has actually been updated more recently. I don't think the title was updated, because for example, it has new equipment that has not been released yet, like the Magical Charm of Demons and so on here. In any case, disregarding that, let's talk about the gear for Virash. Okay? So, in terms of gear, we saw in the video, his best weapon is very, very clearly Ragnarok, because you can do fixed damage to the enemy before combat, breaking last rites, potentially. Okay. Next, armor. Armor-wise, Virash is a little bit, he has a surprising number of options for armor, okay? First things first, last rites generally not considered his best armor because it requires people to be at 100% hit points, and he generally won't be at 100% after he attacks. Thus, for Virash, the best armors are your choice of, there's 3 options. Kagekidan Uniform, can do some damage to ranged attackers that attack him, right? That can, for example, break the sorceress's damage before combat. So Kagekidam uniform or Cloak of Defiance can be one great armor for Virash. A second good armor for Virash would be potentially Monkey King's Vest. Right? This one will allow him to do additional damage to any enemy that attacks him in melee range. Right? 15% increased attack. You're more likely to get attacked by ranged attacks than melee attacks, but nonetheless, this is a viable option for an armor, although not, in my opinion, Kagekiden uniform is more useful. And the third and last one that he could use as well is Demon Lizard Skin, because when attacked, you get a 50% chance to apply one random debuff to the enemies before combat. So, just being able to apply a debuff is always nice to have. So all three of these armors are very viable. Which one you choose is kind of up to you. What you want to do with Virash. Next then, helmets. Helmet-wise, in my opinion, he has two true options. Okay. King's Crown is not very good for Virash because he's too busy charging forward and attacking, and he doesn't really particularly get to retreat after the attack, right? So rather than King's Crown, my opinion is his best helmets is either Jormungandr's Eye or Red Ribbon, right? Jormungandr's Eye allows you to debuff one of the enemies around him so that they do 15% decreased damage. Red Ribbon will allow Virash to heal if the unit hit point is below 50%. He can heal 20% hit points. Right? Now, you don't particularly need the Red Ribbon for Virash because keep in mind, he does do more damage as hit point decreases, right? And he can revive after all. So this healing from the Red Ribbon is not required, but it is a viable option. Right? I would say, overall, Jormungandr's Eye, then Red Ribbon, then maybe King's Crown. Assuming you have that many King's Crowns, right? I've already mentioned before, every assassin, every archer, most flyers want King's Crowns. Do you really have another one for Virash? I doubt it. Alright, so moving on. So basically, three very viable helms for Virash. I would say the best one overall, probably Jormungandr's Eye, then Red Ribbon, then King's Crown. And last but not least, we talk about the accessory for Virash. Now, in terms of accessories, it's interesting to note, Virash is one of the characters who can actually choose to use a Lone Star Armlet, because he's so busy charging forward with Tidal Surge and attacking that he's far ahead of your other party members. So he can really benefit from actually the Lone Star Armlet, the plus 10% attack and defense increase from it. Other than the Lone Star Armlet, Virash will benefit quite a bit from Apex Boots or Red Stockings, because that provides plus 1 mobility, and as an aquatic class, he can actually equip it. So having that 4 mobility can be very, very huge for Virash. You're going to give up 3% attack increase for this, or 5% if you're using the Lone Star Armlet, but it can definitely be worth considering. Okay. Other than those two, right, Slayer's Emblem is considered top tier in general because of hit point and attack increase, as well as 8% attack. Right? Also viable for him is the Overlord's Badge. Once again, hit point and attack with 5% to all stats, that includes attack. And this also does provide various immunities to debuffs, which can always be useful. Right? So Overlord's Badge can also be used for him. And then after those 4, well, you really just want any accessory that gives plus attack and plus 8% attack. Right? Winged Shin Guards would be great. Judge's Talisman would be viable. So there's a lot of other options as well if you don't have the first 4 that I mentioned. And with that, all of Virash's gear is covered. So the very final thing to cover would then be the Enchants for Virash, right? And generally speaking, Virash's main issue with PvP is his mobility, right? We saw in the first clip, that in order to get into range to attack right away, he needed Luna's Wind God Realm to give him essentially like plus 4 additional movement, because he would move 2 more movement initially, and then get 2 more movement after he uses Tidal Surge, something like that. So, since mobility is an issue, after all, Breeze would be a very good enchant for Virash, right? The chance of getting +2 mobility is always useful, and the fact that it gives +10% damage increase is always nice. So without doubt, I would say Breeze is his best enchant, and that basically concludes my coverage of Virash. Okay. So, the last thing I'll mention is, at this point, I will attach the clip of all the other Virash PvP examples, which was actually created by someone on a Chinese server, and I actually found this video on Bilibili, which is basically the China's version of YouTube. Okay. So at this point, you can end the video, you can watch the other examples of Virash being used in PvP, it's up to you. Oh, and one last thing I should mention as well before that is that Virash, I would say his most annoying part of Virash being added, in truth, is probably for timeless trials, because you will very likely face an AI Virash that you will have to kill 7 times or whatever, right? So in that sense, when facing against him, what's become very useful in dealing with him is actually Rachel, and specifically Rachel's 3C, because that applies fixed damage, right? 6 debuffs that can apply fixed damage each time, right? So with those when Rachel uses her AoE, assuming Virash has been killed once, after Virash acts, he's going to take fixed damage like 6 times and kill himself permanently, pretty much. So that would be a way to deal with Virash in Timeless Trials, as you will see in the first clip I'll put into this. So I'll put a clip of AI Virash getting killed, and then I'll have the clip of Virash PvP examples. Okay? So that's it. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you found this video useful. And on that note, Nitro out.
甘く見ないでほしいものだな。甘く見ないでほしいものだな。甘く見ないでほしいものだな。
物色するの言ってくれよ。
絶望せよ。甘く見ないでほしいものだな。甘く見ないでほしいものだな。なるほど。なるほど。
一人も逃しません。消えなさい。覚悟しなさい。ほら、後ろだよ。
甘く見ないでほしいものだな。なるほど。 で欲しいものだ。甘く見ないで欲しいものだ。甘く見ないで欲しいものだ。